This week, we're going to be talking about addiction. So, I mean, I feel like it's a pretty broad question, but what is addiction, or what are some warning signs that someone has an addiction?
Sure. So there's kind of two types of addictions. There's chemical addictions and what we call process addictions. So
Okay.
chemical addictions are, what we typically think about from school, after school programs and stuff like that, like actually using drugs, alcohol, outside substances to alter our internal states.
Okay.
And the addiction is the compulsive use of those substances, basically to cope and avoid with life, to detach from reality. Process addictions are behavioral. They are specific behaviors that we engage in, like gambling, like sex, like eating, that we're using to alter our brain chemistry and soothe. And the trick with process addictions is many of them, unlike chemical addictions, are behaviors which are actually behaviors we need in order to survive. Whereas with an alcoholic, we might say, hey, listen, alcohol is just out, and they cut it out of your life. Alcohol is not essential to live. But for somebody with compulsive eating issues or binge eating, we can't say, well, gosh, let's not eat anymore. Food's too triggering for you, can't do that. Or with somebody with sexual compulsion, the answer is not to say sex, and which is part of how we're made, is just off limits. You just don't have that in your life. So where process addictions occur is when those behaviors essentially become a way for the person to cope with life. They become, in a sense, what we see as the addict bonds with the behavior, and it becomes the way that they navigate emotionally in life.
So when someone's healing from addiction, or is it the same process, whether it's chemical or process like addiction, or do they have, or is the healing process different?
It is different. It is different. So with your it's similar in the sense that we are altering behaviors. So with the alcoholic, we're not going to drink. We're establishing direct sobriety. But with the process addiction, what we're looking to do is begin to engage in those behaviors in a way that is life-giving rather than life-avoiding. And so there are a lot of ways that can be different. Although I will say with sexual addictions, usually we recommend, a lot of experts, and I would agree with this, recommend at least 60 to 90 days of abstinence, not permanent abstinence, but abstinence from that. So.
Okay, that's interesting. So if you see someone in your family, like it's your spouse or someone really close to you, you feel like they might be struggling with addiction, like what advice could you give them to, like, they see someone this is happening to?
Yeah, so if we think that that's going on, and a lot of times when we think it's going on, it probably is. I think one of the first things that we need to be able to do is be taking really good care of ourselves. And what I mean by that is, if addiction is going to change, one of the things you're going to have to be, if you're somebody who loves that person, is you're going to have to be strong, and you're going to have to be healthy, because addiction doesn't typically change easily or willingly. It can, and it does heal and change, but it requires a lot of, you're going to need to be grounded. You're going to need to be grounded and strong. So you need to be taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. That's just so important. Otherwise, you're going to get caught up in the whirlwinds that are going to come as the addict pushes against reality, has all the defenses that they have, and struggles. So that's probably the first thing. The first thing is not to rush out and go, hey, you have an addiction. It's you need to get strong. The second thing that we need to be able to do is we need to be able to speak truth in a loving, in a compassionate way. And as we're speaking that truth in a loving and compassionate way, this is why it's important to take care of ourselves, because you're not speaking the truth looking to win an argument.
Okay.
With the addict, you're speaking the truth because it is the truth. And so we don't go into that just saying, gosh, I said it, and he or she said, no, they don't have an addiction, so what do I do now? I go, no, that's not the point. The point is you are no longer living in denial. And the addict doesn't have control over that. Whether or not you live in denial is 100% up to you. So when you come in and go, you know what, I'm not going to live in denial anymore, I'm not going to do this, regardless of how they respond, you've taken a huge step. And a third beginning step is establishing the boundaries you're going to need to have. Because with all addictions, one of the things that is going to happen is you're going to have boundaries to keep yourself emotionally, physically, and any other way safe. Because addiction makes a person unsafe. It just does. And part of how an addict begins to feel a sense of a need for change is they're no longer able to navigate the world without any limitations. Before, you may have been not having boundaries. You may have been just doing everything that is normal for a spouse or sibling or whatever to do with them. And so in a sense, they could have their addiction and have relationship with you, even though they're unsafe, in a totally unrestricted way. And that has to change because they're not safe. And so beginning to create those boundaries is a third step to take in addressing that.
No, it all makes sense. Sounds like it's a lot of like, I can control what I am and kind of just hoping it'll kind of start to create change in others, but you can't, you can't control someone else's behavior, can't make them do something. So it sounds like a lot of internal work is really what someone needs to do if they see there's
which is remarkably powerful.
Yeah.
For the addict to experience.